What's happening, Packer fans? Welcome into an all-new episode of the Pack a Day podcast, along with the Acme Packing Company. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Of course, that other guy over there, that way, is the one and only Justis Mosqueda. You can follow him on Twitter or X, JUMOSQ. The Packers have won 3 in a row. The Oregon Ducks, unfortunately, Justice, for you, did not quite come through for you, but the Packers did, which is, for me at least, far more important. But more importantly, how the heck are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I almost had forgotten about the Ducks loss. Thanks for the reminder.
You're welcome.
But yeah, Packers are doing great. Jordan Love looks like the guy. Let's do it. Let's go to the playoffs.
Let's do it. Now, I don't know. Like, it feels like the hard part's over, and also the hard part is just beginning. Where like there was not a ton of expectations. There's a lot of. I still think there's pressure, especially probably on the coaching staff, maybe more than anything, going into this 3-game winning streak that they've had. I think that Chargers game was a big one. They obviously get the win there, and then things get rolling in the right direction. You go from a little bit of the hunter to the hunted at this point. You have an easy schedule the rest of the way. You should have a fairly like gimme on your plate from the Carolina Panthers in a few weeks. Like that, it doesn't get much easier than that. We'll see what the Chicago Bears bring. If they like lose a few in a row here, like they're probably ready to go home by that time, the last game of the season. It feels like they should have some there, but I don't know. Like now there's a little bit different pressure, and I almost have a little bit more nerves than I have at any point this season.
I feel the opposite. I'm like, we're playing with
Interesting.
house money. There's no way we end up losing 3 games in this 5-game stretch. Like the teams that we're playing are just
So
too
bad.
bad of football teams. Easiest strength of schedule moving forward. We're already in a position where we currently hold a playoff spot, right? If the season ended
Yep.
today. The only thing I'm really worried about, and like worried is maybe not the term I would use because I don't really care about like making the playoffs would be nice and all that stuff, and getting to play the role of the like frisky 6 or 7 seed that just like doesn't care what happens, feels no pressure, would be a fun role. But like the only team that I'm really worried about kicking Green Bay out of the playoffs is the Rams, who are kind of in the same position as the Packers, where they're getting hot at the right time and all that stuff. And they actually, like, if you look at the New York Times playoff machine, which is kind of what I'm using now. I used to use the 538 one, but they don't do sports anymore, apparently. So using the New York Times machine, the Rams actually have a higher percentage chance to make the playoffs with the Seahawks, which would have seemed crazy a couple weeks ago. But the Seahawks are just keep dropping games, even though a couple of them are close, and they have a couple of tough teams ahead of them too.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting to kind of keep an eye on. The nice thing there too is that Green Bay holds the tiebreaker with the Rams from the Brett
Yeah,
Rippon victory from a few weeks ago, so that could come in handy
and
as
the
well.
Saints, which is the other thing. Like I wrote up like a watch guide for like what to root for as a Packers fan on
Yep.
for the Sunday games. And really what it came down to was, obviously you're rooting against Seattle, right? You're going to end up rooting against the Rams, which, Joe Flacco was an important player involved in all that, playing with the Cleveland Browns last week. And then you're rooting against another NFC South team to really get in the mix. You really only just
Yep.
want one NFC South team in the playoffs. And if that second team ends up being the New Orleans Saints, the Packers have the head-to-head tiebreaker with them too, beyond just the Rams. So those things kind of end up working out. You get another opportunity to play the Vikings, even though they have the tiebreaker over you right now. A lot of things aligning in a way that, Green Bay Packers fans should start planning to watch football games in January.
Seems crazy. Seems crazy to be saying that. Did not seem like that was going to be the case a few weeks ago. Like
Yep.
you thought like maybe if they could steal one of these, like they could have a run the table 5-game streak against 5 bad teams at the end of the year to like maybe have an outside chance. But man, how things have changed in a very short period of time. Before we get to any more like playoff scenarios or things like that, let's kind of dissect this past game, which is obviously fresh of mind. Everyone's super excited about it, and rightfully so. Floor is yours, Justice. What were your key takeaways from this game?
I thought the game kind of played out how I sort of expected it to, honestly. I thought this team was going to be a little bit more competitive with Kansas City than people assumed. I thought all the zone stuff was going to end up helping take away Travis Kelce, and I don't think the Chiefs had many other options in the passing game, at least, than Travis Kelce. I know Rashee Rice Had something like 60 yards or something like that. So good for him. He's a guy that's kind of like the Chiefs Dontavian Wicks, where every Chiefs fan is like, why isn't he on the field more? He should be our number one receiver, all that stuff. But I kind of thought it went how we expected, right? Like the shell coverages are going to help take away the big plays for Kelsey. They were going to need to be not a feast or famine type of offense, right? The Kansas City Chiefs. I don't think their tackles are very good. It didn't matter who was in at left tackle, in my opinion.
Yeah.
3 red zone sacks were really key for that defense, right? Plus the turnover. I think like the Chiefs' offensive production really went the way that the Packers' pass rush production went, where it's, hey, if you can get them on the ground, like that's a drive killer. If not, they're going to be able to walk down the field. And that's kind of how it ended up playing out. And the Packers ended up winning that sort of, it felt like a shootout because there were so few possessions. But like, if you
Yep.
look at the final score, right, like it's not like 45-40 or anything like that. But I don't think either defense was doing a great job last night.
No, neither defense was, and it like wasn't a shootout in like the traditional sense, but it was had like the feel of like every possession was just massively important. Like
Right.
like at all
The Chiefs
times,
punted
like
once.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
exactly. And it felt like that way for both teams, and it was really fun. It was like I don't want to say like a playoff level atmosphere, but almost it just had that kind of feel of like this is a big time game, prime time. Stakes were high, certainly for Green Bay, and like
yeah.
potentially getting that big win, the signature win. It
And
was a lot
Kansas
of
City
fun.
too. I mean,
Yeah,
they
right in the thick of
basically
it.
lost the 1 seed in that
Yeah,
game, right? So
yeah.
in the AFC.
No, it was so fun to watch, and I'm with you. Like I thought, like just the high leverage, situations throughout the course of the game was such a great test for this team. They came through in the end. I talked about it yesterday of how really it's 21-19 Green Bay, and they punt away, and then they finally hold the Chiefs to their one punt on the day, and then they get a field goal, kick it back, or kick it back to them, and they get their one turnover on the day, and then they get another field goal. It's 8 points, and then they stop at the end
Yep.
on the turnover and downs, end of time, whatever we want to call it. I was impressed of how they rose to the situation, and it just felt too like I do think Andy and with Patrick as well. There's a little bit of like if you can get a lead on them, Andy can get a little bit impatient at times. I've talked about in the past of how like when it was Matt and Aaron, like if they went down, they would almost get on tilt a little bit, and it would be like they'd have to get it back on like this next play, and that would be
Yes.
it'd be immediate shot play. It'd be like, all right, we're down by 4, we better score right now. And there'd be no patience. And I feel like Andy and with Mahomes, they sometimes have that same thing where like if they're down, they get a little bit impatient. Now, to be fair, I thought they stuck with the run game pretty darn well. Pacheco ran well, but it still felt like it was advantage Green Bay, especially once they got that 14-6 lead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, honestly, I think Green Bay outplayed them.
Yeah,
Just
I
look at the
think so too.
passing stats. Like, I know everyone wants to make it about those calls at the end of the game, but like, I think Green Bay was the better team that day too.
How do you reconcile that in its entirety of like you have this team that should not be in that conversation of outplaying Detroit and Kansas City in back-to-back weeks. At least, like, I didn't think so.
Never
Like,
being down for 1 second.
no,
Like,
like
crazy.
unbelievably. And they outplayed both of those teams, two of the top, if we're being like at worst, we're probably what 8 teams in the league, two of the top 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that range. Like, that's super impressive. And I don't know how to like they're 500. They are what their record is at some point, but like, man, like you go back and you're like, if they could have just picked up a Falcons, I think they needed to go through some of that adversity and like just kind of go through some of the crap in order to get where they are right now. But this is a really, really interesting team that now I don't know where they like stack in the pecking order of things, but this Jordan Love that we've seen through the past month and this Packers team for the past month is a totally different team than we saw earlier this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be interesting looking back at the trade deadline as like just a snapshot of where the franchise was, right?
Yeah.
2-5, trade deadlines happening. Your sellers, you get rid of Russell Douglas. General manager Brian Gutekunst says, hey, we expect the offense to be better moving forward. And then since then, you're on an absolute tear. You win 4 of 5. Jordan Love has 11 passing touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 1 win against the Steelers on the end of game play. So, like, if you want to count that as a real interception or not, do with that whatever you may want to do. But no quarterback in the NFL has gone from, that poor of passing stats to that good of passing stats, from the first half of the season to the second half of the season. It's pretty staggering. The only thing close is Joe Burrow, who is now out, obviously like with the wrist injury and all that stuff. And that was because he was playing through a calf injury at the start of the season, right? So um, I don't know if we even want to use that data point, right? Like
Right.
the turnaround this offense has had is incredible. Looks nothing like it looked like the first month and a half or so of the
Nope.
season. I mean, it would be interesting looking back and going into some of those losses and thinking like, okay, here are the plays that don't repeat, right? Like they no longer would make this mistake or whatever, because there were
Yeah.
plenty. I mean, blown routes, all sorts of stuff, even on plays that ended up being a good result. They were talking about blown routes, right? Pass protection was shaky for a while, all sorts of stuff, and they don't seem to be making those mistakes anymore, and they seem to be pretty confident. I mean, if you watch any of those post-game locker room things that they end up sending out on Packers social media accounts or YouTube or whatever, um, they seem amped to have Jordan Love, and
Yeah.
a pretty exciting thing, guys. I mean, to know, are we at the point where we know we have a third quarterback in a row? That's pretty nice. That's a pretty nice world to be in.
It's an interesting statement. I want to get more of your take on that because to me, he's the guy now. They have their next
Yeah.
franchise guy. It would take something insane. Like there's nothing that could happen the rest of the year, in my opinion, that would change him from being the starter next year, obviously barring injury, but like to
Right.
be the starter of next season, there's nothing that could change that. Like it's too high level of a play that you're never, it's going to be so hard to give up on that from here on out because you saw it in real life against real good defenses in a primetime situation in multiple weeks back to back.
Well,
Like
with your
you,
back against the wall too. I mean, think
yeah,
about like they had like a 12% chance of making the playoffs or something like that. No one gave them a chance to win both of these games back to back, right? I mean,
without
even
without a running game and without like we could go on and on, but like it is so crazy.
mind you, again, the cheapest offense in football. That's what you're
And you
watching,
don't get
guys. Like, and that's with David Bakhtiari and Aaron Jones getting paid and not playing, right?
and Aaron
So
Rodgers. Like,
yeah, that too. So yeah, I mean, don't let me pump the brakes. Like, you guys should be excited. This is
yeah,
great. This is exactly what we wanted, in the second half of the season. Like, this is if you're envisioning a transition of power at the quarterback position, right? We all knew he was a young quarterback. He's going to go through some bumps and bruises and stuff. And that's not to say all of those are over, but the fact that like we have this proof of concept, this couple week stretch where he's playing like, I mean, frankly, what is it? I looked up his ANYA, which is adjusted net yards per attempt. If you want to get the nitty gritty of this, think of passing yards per play, right? But it includes sacks and sack yardage. It treats touchdowns like a 20 point bonus or 20-yard bonus and interceptions like a 25-yard penalty. In that stat, Jordan Love ranks fourth in the NFL over the last 5 weeks. And the only guys ahead of him are like Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, and CJ Stroud, who are all in like the MVP conversation. So get hype. Like,
yeah.
there's no reason not to be excited, guys. Like, this is exactly what we wanted.
Should we play the game? I didn't
Sure.
prep you for this at all. Let's play the game.
Let's do it.
Tua or Jordan Love?
Oh, so I'm not a Tua guy, and I will forever go down swinging of like that is cannot be repeated. That cannot be repeated. And maybe Michael Penix, the kid out of Washington, is going to be an interesting data point before Tua gets the big money deal and the big cap hits and stuff like that. I don't know if you can do it without Mike McDaniel. I don't
Yeah.
know if you can do it without Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle being your number 1 and 2 wide receivers. Penix is about as close as we're ever going to get to Tua as a prospect, and he's coming in the draft next year. So I don't think that he's necessarily going to pan out, and I don't know what Tua is going to look like on a big time contract. So no, I'm going no on Tua. He's more of a product of his environment, and I will fall on that sword if I'm wrong in 3 years.
All right. Josh Allen or Jordan Love?
Ooh, I'm taking Josh Allen.
Yeah,
Um,
same.
Still a very good quarterback. I'm not betting against that. I mean, if we're talking about I mean, Josh Allen basically showed what Jordan Love was able to show, plus probably a little bit more over a longer period of time. So
Aaron Rodgers or Jordan Love?
Good already made that decision, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He
Let's go,
did.
Love. Let's go, Love.
Yeah, you
Rodgers
have to
coming
go
off the
Love
Achilles.
considering contract, age, everything else. If you're like, well, we'll do this as if you're like starting a franchise tomorrow of like which one would you rather have? So I think that has to be Love inherently at this point. I feel like.
I'm going Love no matter what. That's my quarterback, and
All right.
you fight on that hill.
The poo poo platter of quarterbacks in New England or Jordan Love?
Oh, Jordan Love,
Jordan
easily.
Love. All right. Let's go Ravens. You want Lamar Jackson or
I want
Jordan Love?
Lamar. I want
Same.
Lamar. I do.
We're gonna take Jordan Love over Kenny Pickett. Deshaun
Absolutely.
Watson over Deshaun Watson or Jordan Love?
I think I'm taking Love at this
Big time.
point.
Easily.
Watson hasn't played well since what, like 2020? So
At least. Yeah, it's been a hot second. Joe Burrow. I think we're gonna take Joe Burrow.
yeah, I'll
All
take
right.
Burrow even with the wrist injury. He'll figure
Trevor
it out.
Lawrence.
Ooh, I think I would take Trevor Lawrence. He's playing really good football right now. The Jags have no run game. They basically can't do anything other than drop back pass with Trevor Lawrence. So he leads the team.
I
I'm
think so
picking
too.
Trevor Lawrence.
Anthony Richardson.
Ooh, I'd go Love. That's
I'm
an
going Love
interesting
too.
one.
It
That is
is.
like the first one that's kind of made me pause. Richardson looked good when he was playing, but obviously, he was pretty young coming out, and he's pretty raw but pretty toolsy. I'm gonna go Love just because I've seen more of it, but I'd like a TBD there.
I'm with you 1,000,000%. I'll take Love as well, but there'd be like a little bit of anxiousness of like that I just passed on something really, really special, but I'm still going
Yeah,
Love.
it's like, is he gonna be Josh Allen in like a year and a half? I don't know.
I know,
Like,
or better. Yeah. CJ Stroud, I think we're taking.
yeah, I think I'm taking Stroud. I haven't seen as much of him as I probably need to make that decision, but I'll just say Stroud.
I'm going to take Stroud as well. I think we're going to take Love over any Tennessee Titans quarterback.
Absolutely.
We're going to take Patrick Mahomes. I'm
We
assuming
are.
going to take Justin Herbert.
Yes.
All right.
Not
Russell
sure though.
Wilson.
I'm not.
Russell Wilson.
Ooh, I think I'd take Love over Russell Wilson. I mean, Love can throw over the middle, right? So
Larger
small enough to
contract,
see
a
it.
lot older. Yeah, I'll go Jordan Love as well. Raiders quarterbacks, however you want to go in that direction.
No, yeah, give me
Taking
Love.
Jordan Love. Jalen Hurts.
Here's where we get in trouble.
Uh-oh.
Andy.
Uh-oh.
Okay, Hurts is
Do I
another
need to
one.
save you from yourself? Do I need to save you from yourself?
No, throw me into the fire because like Hurts is another guy like Tua to me, where I'm like, this is not a situation that you can repeat, right? He's got the best offensive line in football, maybe second best behind the Lions. That's it. That's the entire conversation is those two. He's got all these wide receivers to throw to, right? Devonta Smith, AJ Brown. They got Goddard at tight end. I know he's banged up right now. They got a good defense, all that stuff. I think if you switch their positions, like who looks better, Jalen Hurts in Green Bay or Jordan Love in Philadelphia, I think you take Love there. I know this is recency bias and Packers bias and all that stuff, but I think you take Love.
Interesting. I'm going to go Jalen Hurts. I'm going to disagree with you on that one, but I understand the conversation. Dak Prescott or Jordan Love?
I take Dak. I think I'm the biggest Dak fan outside of Dallas, and maybe I would be the number one Dak fan in Dallas. I think he's
really good.
like, there's no difference between him and Joe Burrow to me. Like,
Interesting.
in terms of them in the passing game, I think they command a whole lot at the line of scrimmage. Dak Prescott came into the league, just being able to like live in empty. Like, that's not something guys that young do. I think he's gonna have no, like he's not gonna be like Manning Brady in terms of like what he's able to do as like a field general on the field, just because that came with so many wins, right?
Yeah.
And like he's already behind the eight ball there, but he's going to be a really respected quarterback when we look back on it, and we're going to be like, wow, Cowboys fans were so ungrateful.
Yeah. No, he's a really good quarterback. I would take Dak as well. I'm assuming we can go Love over Daniel Jones and Sam Howell in the rest of that division.
Absolutely.
All right, Jared Goff.
Yeah, I'm not
Love.
taking Jerry. Yeah, I'm
Kirk
taking
Cousins. We taking Jordan Love again there.
Yes. Yeah.
Me
I've
too.
just seen not Kirk fold too much in big spots, but like his inconsistency where you're like, How come some drives you look like Tom Brady, and then sometimes it's just like it
Yeah,
looks
like
like you've never seen quick game before. You look like a high school quarterback. What the hell is going on? Yeah.
and I just think age and contract play a role and recent
Yeah.
Achilles injury as well. So I'm going Love there as well. We're taking Love over Justin Fields, Love over Desmond Ritter, Love
Yep.
over Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask, Love
Yep.
over any Saints quarterbacks, Love over
Yes.
Bryce Young, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I
Yep.
wasn't a big Bryce Young guy. Not
I
me.
like Bryce Young, but to be fair, I did
Also,
have
Bryce Young isn't a very big Bryce Young guy.
I had
Hey.
my two big quarterbacks. That's fair. My two quarterbacks in that draft were Stroud and Richardson, so I feel good about that. I did like Bryce Young, but I like the other two a little bit more. Brock Purdy or Jordan Love.
I'm gonna do it again. This is the third one. It's Purdy, it's Tua, and it's
It
Hurts. Those
hurts.
are the three quarterbacks where I'm like, your supporting cast is so good, and everything we've been taught to take from the quarterback position is that, like, yes, accuracy matters, throwing in time matters, like all that stuff, but you have to have a certain level of arm strength or mobility or something like that X factor to be able to win at a high level. And those other things start to corrode, as they do, because we have a draft, we have a salary cap system. That's when those quarterbacks get exposed. So I am not a Purdy guy. I would go Love, and I know that looks extremely stupid right now with Purdy. I think he's like the MVP favorite or something like that. I mean, yeah, man. Like, you give Love Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel and George
Amazing
Kittle and
offensive
all those guys.
line.
Ayuk's the fourth guy I name.
Yeah, that's yeah. You would be number one in Green Bay, probably right away.
Right.
All right. Stafford.
That is an interesting one. Stafford and Geno are probably the closest comparisons, I think, to what Love's game is like right now. I would give me one game or like one season, I would probably say Stafford. Anything beyond that, I would probably say Love, but that's about as on the tee as you're gonna get.
And then you taking Love over Geno.
Yeah, I think I would take him over Geno. He's right there, like right after Stafford, right ahead of Geno. That's where I would rank Love right now.
And yeah, I would probably go Love, just age, contract, things like that at the moment over those. But
Yeah,
I agree with you. It's close. All right. Last one. Actually, I might have a couple more, but Kyler Murray or Jordan Love. Where are you going?
I think I'm going Kyler. I haven't seen him enough this season to know if he's back or not, but he's just so dynamic of a passer in terms of just the arm angles and stuff like that, and his mobility. I think I would take him, just off of pure talent and hoping that eventually the Cliff Kingsbury will rub off of him.
Interesting. I'm going Jordan on that one, but I definitely am with you. I need to see a little bit more Kyler to make a educated decision on that. But I don't know. I've never been a huge Kyler guy, but he's obviously extremely dynamic, and we'll see if they can kind of get things going in Arizona. All right. Last but not least, Jordan Love or the number one pick in the draft next year.
Whew. I think I would take Love because you know what you have at this point, right?
Yep.
Caleb is a guy that I don't know if he's even going to be the number one pick. Like, by the time, like, there's so much, like, your personality and stuff matters, right? And
The
I think
scouts big time.
he might end up getting dinged for that. Jordan Love is a guy that we talked about all the confidence and stuff like that. Like, I think he's going to ace that. Drake May didn't have the best season this past year. I understand, he had limited weapons and stuff around him. There's not another quarterback that I would even remotely have that conversation with Jordan Love than the top two guys. So I
Yep.
think I would go Love. I wouldn't be surprised if Caleb Williams ends up coming in and setting the world on fire and all that stuff. But I also wouldn't be surprised if, like, they were like, his makeup didn't lead to him panning out. You know what I mean? So we'll
Yep.
see what happens there.
So here's where we end up, at least somewhere in like the conversation, one way or the other. Tua, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence. I'm going to skip Anthony Richardson for now.
Yep.
CJ Stroud, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott. Holy cow. Then there's a lot of nothing. and then maybe Brock Purdy, maybe Stafford, maybe Kyler Murray, somewhere in that, like all of a sudden we're like 13, 14 range. And again, you could move it up 3 or 4 somewhere in there. You can move it down a few, but he's moving up little by little. That was a impromptu, fun little exercise that we did not have planned, but I wanted to go through because like he's playing phenomenal football, and I'm so excited to see how this continues moving forward. Is there anything that you've noticed from him outside of just a confidence, a swagger, a whatever that like he's all of a sudden clicking at the level he's clicking at?
So like him sticking in the pocket, I think is a real like big deal difference. The protection holding up obviously, contributes to that a little bit, but like the touchdown he threw over the middle in that game,
Yep.
I was not expecting him to keep his eyes up, right? And that's a play. I think the first month of the season he doesn't end up
He doesn't
making,
make,
right?
yeah.
At least, how many times did we see him early on in the season get just a little bit of pressure and everything is off of his back foot, or he starts to move and stuff like that? The fact that he's actually like stepping up in the pocket now, like he wasn't doing that, guys, and now that that's available, like
Look
we
out.
could run drop back pass game. Like everything doesn't have to be off of play action. Everything doesn't have to be based off of run look. Everything doesn't need, chips on the edge, stuff like that. So that's where I'm seeing the biggest progress from his end, right? Obviously, the wide receivers and all that stuff, and the usage and the scheme, and Matt putting guys in positions where they're best utilized. I think all of that stuff is improving too. But from Love's perspective, I think just hanging out in the pocket is a big deal, and that's something that he did well in the preseason when we were all excited about him, and why I kind of started those like Geno comps and stuff. Like that's one of the best things that Geno does.
Yeah.
So yeah,
For those of you, by the way, who are thinking that it might be disrespectful of like Geno's played
Geno's a
extremely
good
good
quarterback.
football over the past couple
I
seasons.
know
Like,
Seahawks fans are being dummies and calling for Drew Lock and all that stuff, but like Geno's a good quarterback. Don't get that
yeah,
mistaken.
he's played very well these past couple seasons. I wanted to talk about a couple of the young weapons. I know we've obviously beaten the Dontavian Wicks drum to death, but I thought he had another impressive performance. Christian Watson had one of his best games of the year before unfortunately going down with another injury, which really sucks. I thought there was some sneaky good stuff from both Ben Sims and Tucker Kraft. Sims more as a blocker, but like just fun stuff. And then Kraft, we're starting to see just get integrated in the offense even more in a very like traditional tight end role. I just think like, again, we talked about this over the past couple of weeks, but it feels like they're getting a much better feel for how to use a lot of these weapons and just kind of utilize their skill sets to the best of what they do best, for lack of a better term.
The jet end around was when I knew they have defenses by the string now, right? Where they're like, you think it's coming, and we got something built off of it, right?
Yeah.
Like Jaden Reed is going to get touches out of the backfield, and we have counters to that thing. Obviously, like the goal line stuff where they're out there with what was it? 2 tight ends, a fullback, and an
Royce
offensive
Newman.
lineman. Yeah,
Royce Newman, yeah.
an offensive lineman. They run 2 routes. They're both butt naked, wide open. Like they're doing a real good job in terms of the scheme and putting guys in the right positions and stuff. And it's hard not to get excited about these guys. I still don't know like what their best 3 at wide receiver looks like moving forward. Like I still kind of think you want Wicks and Jaden Reed on the field first, and then the upside of Watson. So like, where does that leave Romeo Dobbs, right? I think those questions will probably solve themselves, as these guys play out their rookie contracts, and we start seeing like who takes to development and who makes those extra couple steps and stuff like that. Tight end Kraft, like I thought Kraft was gonna be a little bit more involved, honestly, when they came
Yeah.
in, and then obviously once camp started, and it looked like they were just clearing the roads for Musgrave to get every opportunity possible. It kind of made sense for them to just develop one rookie tight end instead of 2. But I'm not surprised at all that, basically the moment he was able to step on a football field and get featured, that he looks the part of an NFL player. Like that guy was really good at South Dakota State. They made the right decision. I mean, this is going to be one of the best 1-2 tight end pairings in the NFL for a long time.
1, 2, 3. Get Ben Sims
True.
in that conversation as well.
Undrafted free agent Ben Sims, which so interesting to me that that was a guy who got picked up off of waivers at cut down deadline, and he was a guy who, Yeah, and he was also brought in as a pre-draft visit. The Packers have had
Yep.
their eyes on Ben Sims for a long time, and it's interesting to see one of these guys end up panning out for them. That they've been keeping tabs, and as long as these guys stick around in the league, like they're going to keep their eyes open. And if Tyler Davis goes down, that opens up an opportunity for him.
I'm excited about him, and I'm excited about all these tight ends. This is another one I'm going to go off script and just ask you randomly. Is there any player that you are nervous that when they come back, they're going to fill in for the players that have been playing well in their place, and it might actually be worse? Like some examples of this could be Jair comes back and the secondary doesn't play as well. I'm not saying that's going to be the case, but like
Yeah.
Luke Musgrave comes back and the offense doesn't, function to the same ability. Is there like, I don't think Aaron Jones is going to be in that conversation, but it's like, is there anyone? I was a little bit worried on some of like the safety stuff, just kind of how the safeties were playing for a couple weeks, but I don't know. There's just like, there's this weird feeling that I have of like, did they stumble upon something good and now is like getting all these players back and ingrained? Could it almost like make them take a step back?
The only guy I think is a real candidate is Stokes. And that's not a knock on Stokes, but he's had a lot of injuries over the last year, right?
Yeah.
And I think Carrington Valentine is a really solid football player. Now that's assuming that Jair comes back too, right? Like I'm not
Yep.
saying Stokes isn't going to be an upgrade over Corey
Valentine.
Ballantyne. Like Ballantyne got a couple times in Kansas City or against Kansas City when he was asked to do man to man type of stuff. I don't think he's a starting caliber NFL cornerback, but I think Valentine might be able to be. So maybe that's one. But outside of that, I mean, we've seen it at inside linebacker, right? I don't think McDuffie is a guy you want starting on the interior defensive line. There hasn't really been those injuries. Like maybe if we saw a stretch where like Carl Brooks looked like really, really good as a full-time starter, and then one of these other guys come back off the bench, like that might have been a situation too. Um, Wide receiver, I think for the most part, yeah. I mean, outside of corner and maybe the interior defensive line with like Carl Brooks, I think for the most part, if you look at the Packers depth chart, they have the right guys playing now.
Yeah. The only one that I have some pause on, and it's not like the overall, like the overall will get better, is if you have Jair and Carrington starting at corner together. I'm a little bit worried about the run defense at the corner position in totality because Valentine is not a good tackler and is not
Right.
super aggressive in run defense. Jair, especially coming off another shoulder injury, I have a feeling is not going to be super excited about playing super aggressive in run defense and was not earlier this year already. That's like the only small thing that I have on the like that I'm like a little bit worried of like, and do they maybe just go Ballantyne and Jair on early downs or I don't know, they'll have some options, but I'm just a little bit intrigued on that part of it.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting, and I mean, that is kind of a real problem. Like, I don't know if you guys remember, um, Kavian Ento, right?
No, yeah.
But Ento is kind of, in terms of coverage skills, very similar to what Carrington Valentine brings to the table.
Yep.
The difference is Ento was like an F minus in terms of what he could do in run defense, right? And wide receiver convert, like you can get into all of the tropes there, right? Valentine is like a D plus, probably like passable at the
Yep.
NFL level, but like you know, still a little bit of a liability. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that could be a legitimate thing. I just don't know how you really protect your corners that much at this point in the NFL when everything is getting condensed. The wide receivers are cracking safeties. Like a lot of people are leaving cornerbacks uncovered.
Yep. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they do anything different or if they just if everyone's healthy, it's just going to be Carrington, Nixon, and Jair, and they're just going to roll with it and see what happens. But just
And that
one I
could
have
be a
to
really good unit. I mean, that might be a really good
oh,
unit. Like,
especially from a pass coverage standpoint, I think it can be as
right.
well. No, no question. What did you think of Savage and Owens getting the start at safety?
Wasn't too surprised once I figured out, like, they were gonna use Ford as the dime back, and that's kind of like their designated, like, guy coming off an injury type of situation. Like, even when Savage missed part of the game, right? They brought in Anthony Johnson Jr. instead
Yep.
of Ford. Like, Ford was just clearly on a pitch count. So I'm not surprised that Savage was ahead of um Anthony Johnson Jr. on the depth chart, or Owens was ahead of Anthony Johnson Jr. on the depth chart. That's kind of how this whole thing has been working this entire season. And once it was clear that Ford was on a pitch count, I was like, oh, okay, this is just what they're doing. They're playing him on special teams. He's going to get a couple dime looks. We'll see in like 2 weeks.
Yeah, good point. I didn't think of it that way, but that makes a ton of sense, especially when you say once the Savage injury hit and they put Anthony Johnson Jr. in and kept Ford in that role. That does make a lot of sense, and we'll see if that changes over the course of the next few weeks, and if he ultimately gets more playing time. All right, Anders Carlson, probably his biggest day. I don't know if it's like probably his best day too, but those were clutch kicks in the fourth quarter. You got to figure that like that gives him a massive amount of confidence moving forward.
Right. And he's not going to be perfect moving forward either. Right. Like we've seen a little bit of the shakiness, from a young kicker already, but like the returns are good. And I mean, what more is there to say? Like he nailed it when we needed him, man. Like I was holding my breath, staring at the screen, for
Everyone
that
was.
last kick too. So
that stadium had a lot of clenched butts in seats. Like you could tell, like there was not a ton of anything going on at that moment, because it just is a huge game changer if he makes or misses that kick. Like the difference between up 8 kicking off and up 5 at like the 40-yard line is a huge difference in that game. So massively clutch from him, and hopefully, like you said, there's going to still be hiccups, but hopefully a great sign for him moving forward.
Were you at the game? Was there that much wind? Because I know on that kick, the flags on top of the goalposts were just laying down. Was there much wind at the game?
I was in the press box, so I was, in non-windy conditions regardless, eating cheese curds. So I was very lucky in that regards, but it didn't seem overly windy. But yeah, it didn't seem massively windy. But like you said, the flags were definitely moving. And sometimes that stadium's weird with how the wind works, where it's like, it doesn't seem like it's windy at all, but on the field it's spiraling. And there's other times where the flag is like just beating across up on the top of the stadium, and like down in the field, like the flags are just like limp. It's a weirdo stadium when it comes to that stuff, which I'm sure like Anders is learning like as he goes as to like how some of that stuff goes into it. And so far so good, right, especially in a key situation.
Yeah. I can't imagine kicking in that situation, or let alone punting, where you're going to have to get a whole lot of depth, and you're like, I don't know what's above me, right? Like that's got to be crazy.
Sure. Yeah, no question about it. And yeah, he had a nice game overall. I thought kickoffs, everything, like just hopefully that can be a little bit more steady moving forward, but that has to give him confidence. All right, last but not least, Packers, Giants. Giants have extended rest going into this game, had a bye week, and now it's a Monday night game, so they're going to be extremely well rested. Packers open as 6-point favorites on the road in New York against a team they lost to just a season ago. Thoughts on this game as we start moving ahead to this upcoming schedule and remaining games?
I think this is a very bad football team. I think the Packers are going to win. I don't think Tommy DeVito is long for the NFL. I think Wink Martindale's blitz-heavy scheme isn't going to catch this team by surprise, right? Yeah. I mean, you're coming off of a game against Spags. You've already played Flores, right, in Minnesota. Spags is the Kansas City Chiefs defensive coordinator. Wink Martindale's the DC with the Giants. He was with Baltimore Ravens for a long time. I don't think they're going to catch him by surprise, and I don't think they're more talented than Green Bay. And I think Green Bay's been a whole lot more consistent, particularly in the passing game, than the Giants this season. So I'm all over Green Bay. I know they were only like a 3-point or a 6-point favorite. Already put some money down on that. Feel pretty confident going into this one. Now, maybe that's, famous last words, blame me for the jinx, all that stuff, but that's how I'm feeling.
There's no question to me that Green Bay is the better team in this game. There's just not much on New York that scares you like at all.
You see their running backs coach right now is taking an interview to be the OC at Syracuse. Like these guys are already looking for new jobs. And everyone in college football is trying to get into the NFL. And you have an NFL guy being like, see a piece, I'm going to call it like in season.
Yeah, that's not a great sign. But
I don't know what morale is like in New York at this point.
Well, there's been the rumors too that Martindale and what's his face Dable are not on the same page. There's been some angst there. Like it is not going well. They did activate Tyrod Taylor off of IR. I don't know if he's going to be able to make it in time, or if it's just opening the window and it's still going to be a few weeks. We'll have to kind of keep an eye on that. Dexter Lawrence has been a little bit beat up along the defensive line. Kayvon Thibodeau has been hit and miss here and there. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know. There's just not a whole lot.
Very streaky. Like they have some. Dang, I'm spacing on his name. The corner from Maryland. He's a pretty.
Banks, Deontay
Yeah,
Banks.
Banks is a pretty good player.
Yep.
But outside of that, like there's not that many silver lines for this Giants team. Their record is actually better than their team probably is at this point.
I agree.
That's not a good football team. That's a team that, if you run simulations, over and over again, they probably end up with the first overall pick a good amount of time. Like that, they're not as good as their record right now.
They had, 2 fewer losses before their last 2 games, which was a win against the Commanders, who are also a extremely bad football team coming off of the trade deadline where Washington
And they fired their defensive coordinator immediately.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So that's not been going great. And then they beat the New England Patriots, who it's like right in the conversation with the Panthers as worst team in football. They beat them 10-7 in that game. Earlier, they beat Arizona 31-28 in week 2, when Arizona was not a real team at that point and certainly didn't have Kyler Murray. Their other win, also against Washington, 14-7 at home. So their 4 wins are about as bad as you could possibly get. They did beat the Jets. No, I lied. They lost to the Jets 13-10. So they even lost to the Jets 13-10 in overtime. So yeah, not great. I like Green Bay in this one.
I'm a Pats fan right now. You've lost 2 games in a row by a combined score of 13-7, 13-6, something like that. So
it needs to be Malik Cunningham time in New England. Just let him run around, do something. Like, give me something to like watch, if nothing else.
I mean, Bill Belichick might as well be a Giant or a Charger at this point, right? Like he's got to be checked out. There's no way.
Yeah, that whole organization needs a reboot, a reload, a refresh, and every other word that you could possibly put in there. I'm with you. I like Green Bay in this one. The only thing that scares me is Green Bay. Like they just can't have like the confidence and like, all right, we're going to win this one easy. We're coming off bigger wins, and like as long as they come focused like they did these past couple weeks, it's game over. But they just have to take care of their own business.
Yep. And again, they got easiest strength of schedule moving forward. The 5 teams that they play combined have a .333 win percentage, right?
20 and 40.
Yeah, so they're losing 2 of every 3 games that they play. And these teams have played each other too, by the way. The only team at or above 500 on their schedule is the 500 Minnesota Vikings with a backup quarterback in Josh Dobbs. All they got to do is go 3-2 in this stretch, and they're in a pretty good spot. Not a surefire lock, but a pretty good spot to make the playoffs. If they go 4-1, they're in.
They're in.
That's how it works.
No, I'm right there with you. Justin, it's going to be fun. We've got a really fun remainder of the season, which at one point I wasn't sure what we were going to be discussing coming off of these 3 games and like what we'd be talking about. If it was just like, all right, well, every young player needs to play. Let's see what practice squad guys they can sign off of other rosters. Like, I think that could have been the discussion. I'm so glad it's not. And I'm so glad we're talking about this stuff instead. Final thoughts? Anything else you want to get off your chest? Anything you want to throw at me since I threw like 10 random things at you?
Is Joe Barry safe?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so too.
I mean, the season's like not complete in the fact that like if you screw up massively in these 5 games against these 5 teams, then like weird stuff can still happen, right?
It would have to be like national headline mistakes.
Yeah, bad. Yes.
Like it would have to be the narrative of the NFL that week of how bad you messed up, basically.
Big time. Like it would almost like, I feel like it almost has to be like you beat New York and like you're just like a shoe-in for the playoffs, and then you lose your final 4 and everything just breaks down and the defense can't stop the Panthers. It can't stop Tampa Bay. It's just like, it can't stop Chicago. It's just like this massive choke job at the end. Yeah. We're not even speaking it into existence, Justice. I think
it might even like it might even have to involve players at this point, right? Like being vocal about, the job and stuff. So I think Barry's back. He did it. He did it again.
You give him credit. If nothing else, he is resilient and he finds ways to stick around. And I think these past few games, while still having insane moments where you just want to like, again, I've said this before, but like just put your head through a wall and like be like, what the heck is going on? Like the results over the past few weeks
We couldn't get a kickoff team or a field goal team off the sideline fast enough at one point. Do you remember that? That was against
Oh,
Atlanta.
oh yeah.
Like,
Don't remind
just
me.
so many dumb things that, like, are no longer happening, and it's like, okay, we can finally evaluate this team, and it actually looks half decent. Nice.
It is. And like it's so crazy. The like I get sometimes just getting a win in the win column, which is definitely what they needed against the Rams, and just to like get some level of confidence and stuff going in the right direction. But like, holy crap! Like it seems silly in hindsight, and I think some people will be like, "Oh, you're just prisoner of the moment." Of like, when we're questioning LaFleur of like, is this can he be the guy that takes a young team and kind of brings them up and brings them to the next level and those sort of things? But like, you watch the stuff that was happening early in the season, and you would question anything that was involved at that point. Like you're like, what is possibly going on here? Are they like there'd be plays? There's the 2-point play against the Saints, right? Like that they needed to win the game, and it's supposed to be a motion where Reed comes in motion and
Right.
then zooms out in the flat to hit him easy in the flat, and the snap bait like comes this close to hitting him. He's supposed to be like way out there, and the snap almost hits him. Like there's stuff that should not happen. And as you pointed out numerous times, like is not normal in the NFL that's going
Jordan Love
on.
taking the sneak that never came.
Oh my God. Like there's
Like,
stuff that does
there
not
was a lot,
happen
man.
ever in the
There was a
NFL in
lot.
like the first like what 8 weeks of the season, or what 2 and 5, I guess. So like 7 weeks.
Yeah.
And then like now it looks like this. Now they're beating like some of the best teams in the NFL and outplaying them for 4 quarters and never trailing for a second. Some of it doesn't compute. Like I would not have believed you. I would have called you crazy if you predicted this in any way. But I'm certainly happy that it is this way.
That's what Tex and I said last night. We were like, if we would have predicted this, we would have sounded dumb while we were doing it, right?
Oh
Like
yeah.
if you would have
You're
said
a
this is
homer.
what it
You're
looks
just a
like,
dumb homer that's just like
yeah,
you've got rose tinted glasses and all you can see are the positives. Like be real, be realistic for once. Like, no, you would have gotten like completely, ostracized and be like, this is a guy that covers the Packers and you're gonna go 3-0 after going, what, 2-6 or 3-6, or 3-6. They're gonna now go 3-0 against the Chargers, the Lions and the Chiefs. Like, yeah, okay, bud. Like, yeah, you would have been, everyone would have called you insane. You would have been insane.
yeah.
Except you would have been right somehow. Justis, amazing stuff. Where can we find all of your great work?
At Jumosk on Twitter, JUMOSQ. You can find all their stuff at acmepackingcompany.com. Tune into our podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. I do the this turns into our Tuesday show on our feed. The Monday show is usually the recap that we have with Evan Tex Western. And then on Fridays, I preview with a fan of the team that the Packers are going to face. So like this week, it'll be Keegan Abdu, my buddy from Next Gen Stats, who's a New York Giants fan. So you can listen to all that stuff on the Acme Packing Company podcast feed.
Make sure to check that all out. It's always amazing work. Acme Packing Company as a whole is absolutely incredible. So make sure you're checking out their site daily. You can find the Pack a Day podcast wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can follow at Pack a Day podcast on Twitter. Again, you can follow me at Andy Herman NFL. For Justis, for me, that's going to do it for us today. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.